This week in Pure Reinvention.
I can't begin, Misty, to tell you the number of executives I've talked to who have gone through strategic plans that know in their gut during the day they're going through this process that the discussion that's happening is so overwhelming, it would take hundreds of people to accomplish what's being put into this plan. They've quit before they've even started.
Episode 82, Less is More. Simple tips for your one-page strategic plan.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
Welcome to this episode of Pure Reinvention, where we create space for the unexpected by inspiring a reinvention lifestyle. I want to thank everyone for the feedback on the survey that we did. We got some incredible feedback out of that, so thank you very much. In fact, the shorts that we've been doing and will continue to do is based on that feedback.
Yeah, we've been learning a lot, and this strategic plan, one-page strategic plan, kind of emerged as a thing that we've done before, and we realized that more people wanted it, so we're here to give you some tips. But before we do that,
you have an announcement.
We want to say congratulations to our $100 Pure Reinvention product winner, and that is Miss Amy Brooke. Congratulations. Thank you for taking our survey, and your feedback was valuable, and we love learning from what our audience thinks.
This week's episode is sponsored by HRM Services, providing solutions that work. HRMS provides customized human resource consulting services to fit the unique needs of their clients. Every client has a story, and they make it their business to learn yours. Contact HRM Services today at 517-974-8033 or visit their website at hrmservices.biz.
So let's dive in, Misty, to the subject at hand, which is the one-page strategic plan. Why is that even a topic?
Well, we know that strategic plans in the past have always been kind of cumbersome things that people do this exercise, on a weekend retreat maybe or a staff retreat, and then it sits on a shelf. And if it's one page and easily digestible, you're more apt to keep it in front of you.
I think that's absolutely right. When I got to watching the behavior of a lot of energy and money spent on these massive strategic plans that sat on the shelf, they didn't make a lot of sense.
They don't get used.
There was something about that entire process that wasn't working. So if you go back and you ask, okay, why wasn't that working? I think we've come up with 4 very significant bullet points that I think highlight why a one-page strategic plan has got to be what you're after.
Yeah, and before we dig into those bullet points, let's listen to Drew Mitchell from the Clinton County Economic Alliance. She has experience with this. She has a one-page strategic plan and had some really good thoughts to share on a previous podcast.
So how does this drive what I do on a daily basis now? You're exactly right. I keep my little schematic on the top of my desk, and as I get a phone call or an invitation to a meeting or an email or do outreach in the community, I look at what the opportunity is that's being presented to me and whether it fits into one of our market segments so that I can, and helps me evaluate how I prioritize what I do now.
I think Drew does an exceptional job of reinforcing the importance of the one-page strategic plan, Misty. And I think it all had to do with focusing on why were we doing a strategic plan to begin with. Mm-hmm. And I think for historical reasons, we've felt like we've had to fill volumes of sheets of paper and put it in a notebook. And in reality, what a strategic plan needs to be is a guide for the executive or for the business to understand where it's going.
It's kind of like the elevator pitch for not just your mission statement or who you are, but for your whole organization.
And it really takes more energy to kind of understand why you want to do that than to put together all of the tactics. So the first thing I want to remind everybody is we have to, in our strategic thought process, understand why we are doing the strategic plan, because that helps us focus on starting with where we want to end. Mm-hmm. So I want to say that again. We have to start with an understanding that we identify where we want to end. If you think about the old way we looked at maps, here's where I am, where do I want to go? If we don't have an idea of where we want to go, we can fill it with a whole lot of stuff I think it's really important to give the business a very clear, fastest path to get where we want to go. Step one, start with the end in mind. You have to have the why.
And step 2 is you have to identify your owners.
I think it's absolutely critical. If you're going to get in a car and you're going to drive down the road, I want to know who's driving. Who are the decision makers? Who are actually going to do the work? Is this a work of 100 people, or is this the work of one? I can't begin, Misty, to tell you the number of executives I've talked to who have gone through strategic plans that know in their gut during the day they're going through this process that the discussion that's happening is so overwhelming, it would take hundreds of people to accomplish what's being put into this plan. They've quit before they've even started.
So full disclosure, I had a little bit of a hard time wrapping my head around exactly where owners should be on this process. And Mike, you gave me a great analogy, so I kind of want to share that with any other listeners who might be wondering why we have owners so early on in the process. And you talked about chores. So if we're going to do chores, you want to know if it's one person or if there's 4 people.
I want to know whether we have mechanical equipment we're using or whether we're going to use our own muscle power. See, all of those characteristics go into allocating resources and assets. So if it's just me that is responsible for the tasks that are to be done, it's going to be done very differently than if there's 5 of us. And so by understanding who the ownership really belongs to, and by ownership I mean who's really in charge of the implementation. I'm not talking about ownership in terms of who's really overseeing the project, right? Whoever's overseeing the chore is different than who's actually doing the chore. That's why, Misty, absolutely have to insist that the person who's doing the strategic plan is the person who's going to write the strategic plan.
And that makes so much sense.
That is the ownership. Mm-hmm. Now, from that perspective, everything else starts to fall into place. But if we miss the fact that if I'm going to do the work, I have to write the strategic plan, we start to go wrong. So that's why it's number 2, because then I become the owner of whatever is to follow.
So number 3 then, once you've identified those owners, is we want you to be realistic.
It's all about the implementation, Misty. So we can write a lot of fun, crazy, weird things into our strategic plan. But if I'm being evaluated on getting to a destination, then I really have to be able to think through, how do I make this strategic plan realistic? What are the simple steps, the simple goals, the simple implementation strategies? I've seen pages and pages and pages of tactics and sub-tactics and add-ons that you pare all that back. Very simply, I want to see the implementation strategy. Because in business, it really comes down to very simple understandings. And so by keeping it realistic, by focusing on what can I realistically implement, we can keep it simple.
So after you have those realistic tasks that you already know who's owning them, the last and final thing to have a perfect one-page strategic plan is to prioritize those things.
And that's just the logic sequence. So when you think about how you prioritize, how you go to work, and how you prepare for your day, you have created a logic sequence. So you do this, and then you move to this, and then you move to the next thing. So in your strategic plan, since you can't do everything at once, what is your logic sequence? How do you prioritize so that when you have a finite amount of energy, you are making sure that that energy is allocated towards the right things at the right times? So you're not focusing on step 10 with your energy when you need to be focusing on step 1.
And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. It's hard because there are so many demands in your day-to-day. You know, it's easy to talk about it right now when you're not under fire and getting all these phone calls and have your tasks to do. But Drew made a good point in what she said, because she looks back at that one-pager, and when she gets calls and when she gets demands or member questions, she's able to say, where does that fall on my list of priorities?
Because her strategic plan is one page, not only does it help her and remind her where her priorities are, It reminds the business where the priorities are. It reminds the board where the priorities are. So instead of a lot of brainstorming and great ideas that are beginning to be thrown together, we are able to, in fact, reverse that and make sure that we're constantly reminding everyone of these 4 key steps and making sure that we're following a logic sequence to get to a very understandable set of goals.
If you would like your own template for how to make a one-page strategic plan, you can get it on our mobile app. So download that, or if you already have it, just go to the little download section. You can find it on the Apple Store, iTunes Store, or also from the Google Play Store. And let us know how it works out for you. We'd love to hear feedback, or if you can send in a sample, you can email us at hello@PureReinvention.com and share with us what you thought about this.
Let's just remember, less is more in this case, Misty. If you're ready for a change, let's make it a change that lasts. Let's make it Pure Reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter @Pure Reinvention or sign up for our mailing list at PureReinvention.com.